Hypochlorous acid is the same molecule your white blood cells produce. So if you get cut, scraped, burned, any type of skin damage, your body's natural immune response is to send white blood cells to that injury.
I would deal with open wounds, and one of the things that I did was literally massage PRP.
Everything goes through the same manufacturing process that goes into a hospital. If you are using it on open skin, you know it's the same process that we use for our surgical.
Justin Gardner, thanks so much for coming on the show today. I'm glad to have you.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, so we're going to talk about skin and hypochlorous acid, and I'm super excited because I have been using your product for years and years and years, and I think we have some fun stories to discuss, so I'm glad to have you here. Okay, first off, tell me about hypochlorous acid and what it is, because I think there's a lot of misunderstanding out there.
Sure. So the easiest way I like to explain it is hypochlorous acid is the same molecule your white blood cells produce. So if you get cut, scraped, burned, any type of skin damage, your body's natural immune response is to send white blood cells to that injury. Inside the white blood cells is hypochlorous acid. And it's your body's natural mechanism to help fight off foreign pathogens, so to kill off any bacteria. It also is your body's natural mechanism to help reduce the inflammatory response and to support the natural healing process. And so what we've been able to do, and hypochlorous, again, is innate to the immune system. Scientists figure out how to replicate it over 100 years ago. But we're now able to replicate it and stabilize it into a formulation so you can put it into a topical solution that you can now apply to your skin the same way that your body's working internally. And so what you get is a really powerful, natural, non-toxic antimicrobial that also helps with things like inflammation.
So it is all the rage these days with the young people on TikTok. And I think that's how most people might know it who are listening to the show. As part of a multi-step skincare routine, all the girlies are spraying it on their face. But I know this from the regenerative medicine world. So my background was I did regenerative injection therapies for decades. And I used to take brigades of medical and naturopathic doctors down to Mexico. And we would treat hundreds of people in the local hospitals there. And these were people who wouldn't be able to receive care otherwise. And we had to keep costs low. And prolotherapy was what we were doing. And prolotherapy, I don't know if you're familiar with it, but it's a very well-tolerated treatment where you utilize dextrose to regenerate the joints, basically. But you have to do intra-articular. And a lot of these patients had diabetes or other comorbidities that would put them at high risk for infection. So that was always the big concern, was like, do not. And we've got hundreds of people coming through at a high pace. And like the risk, that was always my biggest concern, as one of the facilitators was like, please God, do not give any of these patients a joint infection, because that would be the end of it. And so they were using hypochlorous acid as a spray. And I was like, how is this water? I'd never heard of it. And this is like 10 years ago. And I'm like, how does this water spray disinfect the joint? It didn't seem right. I was like, this isn't. But then one of the orthopedic surgeons on the brigade did a whole lecture on it. And he compared it to chlorhexidine. He compared it to iodine and all the other preps that we would do normally. And it just outshined all of them. And it was so inexpensive and it was so great. And then I came back to the States and I couldn't find it anywhere. And the only place I could find it was in veterinary medicine. So the feed store, the Wilco or the Tractor Supply or whatever. And then flash forward a few years, I'm in Hawaii with my best friend, and I step on a rock that punctures the bottom of my foot. And I don't know, you're a surfer. Staph is super prevalent on the coastline. I don't know if it's in California yet, but in Hawaii back then, like everybody was getting staph. And so my buddy who's a naturopath there was like, you have to get this active skin stuff. It came in a gel, and he's like, just keep it on there. And, he literally would spray his body down after he got out of the water. So all these years later, and then you and I connected, and I'm like, you have to come on and talk about this. So that's my fun little hypochlorous story. But tell us what you told me off the air. Like, how did this unfold, that timeline, as far as it coming to the States?
So it's funny. My introduction to hypochlorous was kind of similar to you. I used to work in the hospital side, more on the commercialization of new products, also in regenerative medicine. And I owned a company that would help products launch into the hospital space. And a lot of what we were doing were really expensive biologic regenerative tissues. And they were using them for things like diabetic foot ulcers, venous stasis ulcers. So where a patient was vascularly compromised and their wounds wouldn't heal. And a medical device company came to me and said, we want to launch this technology called hypochlorous acid into the hospital side. And that was probably about 10, 12 years ago. And they explained to me the science, and like any new product, I'm doing all the clinical research and I'm reading about it and understanding the price point. And these expensive biologics are thousands of dollars.
Yeah.
And this is relatively very inexpensive. And I'm going, wow, this is a really powerful technology and really inexpensive. And then, it's funny, you never market this on the hospital side very often, but it was natural and non-toxic too. And I was like, wow, this is really cool. And so long story short, I helped them launch it into the hospital side, but I was an avid surfer at the time that would go on these boat trips to the Maldives and to Hawaii and reef cut staff, everything. And so I started to take samples along with me everywhere I was going. And I'd hand it out to friends, and you just watch this kind of evangelical kind of like, this stuff is amazing. Not only does it work for cuts, but it's bug bites, it's sunburns, and
it doesn't sting.
It doesn't sting.
Yeah.
And so it became this like, just watch it catch on with all of my friends and all the athletes I was hanging out with. And I went back to the medical device company and I said, what are you doing with your over-the-counter indication? And they said, nothing, we're going to focus on the hospital. And so I decided I'm going to take this over the counter. It has the same safety profile as saline solution too. So it's a really safe product. It's a really powerful antimicrobial, antifungal, antiviral without having any of those kind of side effects that you get out of toxic products. And so we launched Active Skin Repair now 10 years ago. Funny enough is, because we were so involved in the action sports community at the beginning, Hawaii was one of the first places that we launched. We got on the World Surf League.
I bought it at a surf shop.
Yeah.
That's where I found it. It was like right on the counter next to the, sunblock. So.
The whole Pro Tour still uses it all in their medical tents. And we got into professional mountain biking and all of these things. But it wasn't until probably right around like 2019, 2020, when COVID was happening, that we really watched it catch on with moms as a better for you. And these days, almost all of our customers are moms looking for better, natural, non-toxic solutions. And like you were saying, there's also popped up a lot in the skincare side of things.
And the thing that I was researching for this episode, and I have been hesitant to spray it on my face before I put on the rest of my skincare, because I am very concerned about the skin barrier and the microbiome, and I didn't want to disrupt that because I worked so hard to heal my skin barrier. But it only kills the bugs we don't want. Talk about that, how it preserves the good guys.
It's selective in how it's killing off that bad bacteria without affecting the microbiome. And so, you can get something that's going and killing that bad bacteria without killing the good bacteria, which again, it's, the body is such a powerful mechanism, right? And so when we can harness that and you be able to use that topically as opposed to synthetic chemicals or antibiotics, it's, just a really great, especially first line therapy.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I would say too is what makes Active Skin Repair unique is we are FDA cleared to be used on open skin. And we have to go, we have a unique proprietary formulation. And one of the things that's really important about hypochlorous acid is that it stays within a pH range that's healthy to skin too. So you don't want it to go below like a 4 pH. You certainly don't want it to be above a 7. And so being able to stabilize it and get it to the right parts per million of hypochlorous, because you don't want too much hypochlorous in it. You want it just around 100 to 200 ppm, which gets you all that antimicrobial without any of the kind of downside of it. And then keeping it between a 5 to 7 pH is really important. And with our formulation, because what we know is for 2 years, it stays very specific in that pH range. And so what you can get with a lot of contract manufactured hypochlorous is you can get a pH range that's moving quite a bit.
Okay. So it's really, you go to the store now like Ulta and you look at all the skincare, and somebody seems to have a hypochlorous acid product, and rarely is it in isolation. It's usually in a mix. And we were talking about the problem with that before we started rolling.
Yep. And it's just on the cosmetic side, again, I love the molecule and there's a lot of great products out there. And I've just been amazing to see how popular hyperchlorous has gotten, especially over the last 10 years. Some of the problems with the formulation is we have a research and development department. We'll always bring them in and we'll test them. And a lot of times what you'll get is the hyperchlorous, because it's not, the formulation isn't done correctly, it's not stabilized correctly, it's just not active. There's no active hyperchlorous. Or even worse, it might be at a lower pH that could actually cause some irritation to your skin as well. That just doesn't have that regulatory threshold that an FDA cleared product like ours has to go through. And what we do is every time before we produce a product, we test it to make sure it falls within that pH range, that it has the proper parts per million to it, and we know it's going to stay within that range for 2 years. So there's a 2-year shelf life that we keep on it. And that's one of the quick ways that I can always tell on a hyperchlorous whether they've gone through that is to see if there's an expiration date, a lot number on it, things that tells me somebody's doing the testing that really knows that there's a proper formulation to it.
So if it's in a serum with a bunch of other ingredients, or it's hanging out, in a lotion or in some other product, the chances of it, because you said it's really unstable when it's not properly formulated.
It's a really unstable molecule. And so to date, nobody's been able to recipe it with other ingredients. And so it doesn't mean it can't happen, but it's a pretty telltale sign for me when I see added ingredients in there that somebody just doesn't understand the science of hyperchlorous. And every time we've tested them when they have other ingredients, there's no active hyperchlorous in it.
I was cleaning my counter off with it one time, and my husband was like, you're just putting water on the counter. And he wanted he wanted something that was scented. And my friend and I were talking about this before we came over. Like, they want a scented cleanse. They want something to smell like Lysol. They don't believe that this is going to, and it has antiviral properties too, right? And so we can use this in a variety of ways. And it's like you said, it's not going to disrupt the skin barrier. It's not got a pH that's going to disrupt the skin barrier, and it's not going to sting, and it's not going to, you can put it, you kind of buzz through that, but being able to put something into an open wound is a huge deal, especially if you need to apply some of those regenerative treatments you were talking about, or even any like burns, open wounds. That's a really challenging, because I've worked with those too clinically, and like, it is a challenging place to be able to, because you are locking in sometimes infection, especially if that wound is over 6 hours old. And so to have something that has all of those properties is kind of a big win.
Yeah, but I think that's for us in active skin repair, it's the same medical grade formulation, same process. Everything goes through the same manufacturing process that goes into a hospital surgical procedure. So if you are using it on open skin, it's the same process that we use for our surgical products that are being used in really kind of intensive care burn units. They get used in neonatal intensive care units as well. So that safety and that efficacy is going to be there, where you just don't get that with a lot of the other over-the-counter products. But it's a great product. And when one of the ways that it gets used in wound care centers is it also disrupts biofilm. So when you get that bacterial colonization,
talk about
it's like a 7 to 8 log reduction with our formulation. And so it can actually, because with a biofilm, you're getting that EPS matrix, right? So you get that, and it protects a lot of that planktonic bacteria from being killed. And so what hypochlorous acid can actually do is break up that EPS matrix and disrupt that biofilm and kill that planktonic bacteria.
So I'm going to explain that in English for the audience. Basically, a biofilm, the way that I describe it to people is it's like the Borg from Star Trek, and everything is assimilated in the Borg. And these organisms create a sticky film that they quorum sense in, and they talk to each other, and they exchange DNA, and they exchange resistance DNA to different antibiotics. And it's basically like a hellscape of bacteria and fungi and viruses that all are up against you, and you're not winning. And whatever you apply to the biofilm may not penetrate to, like, I'm always thinking orally, not that I would take this orally, but I'm considering the biofilm in the gut. I can't get any of the medications or herbs or any of the substances that I would use to reset the gut if and I'm not talking about like, I'm not a big kill all the things. That's why I like this for the skin, because I'm not a big kill everything and hope that the right biome reestablishes itself. But if you've got a biofilm, you can't get through it. So nothing really works. And you're so right. When it comes to wounds, I used to do a lot with platelet-rich plasma in my practice, and I would deal with open wounds. And one of the things that I did was literally massage PRP. I would make PRP gel and I would massage it into the wound. And part of the reason was because I would just, without testing, assume because it wasn't granulating, it wasn't closing, that we were probably dealing with some kind of biofilm. And so I was like mechanically trying to disrupt things. Another thing that I would often do, that I've actually used this for my dogs, I have, like, we lived on a farm, so it was like dogs, husband, everybody was coming in with something. There was like, one of my dogs got a bot fly larvae in her back and she chewed it out. So like, it was disgusting. And so I used the gel. But again, with that manual, working it in and rubbing it in, but it takes, sometimes you have to, and this is not medical advice, but sometimes I have to remove the scab. Like I have to get the scab off so that I can get the tissue underneath to come up and granulate. And so this also works for that. Like I can break down cradle cap with it. I have used it on hot spots on dogs. I think my dogs have probably used it more than I have. My husband will not apply an ointment and a bandage to anything because he's like, just let it heal, leave me alone. But he'll use this, right? Because he can spray it on and let it dry, or he can let the gel set and then he can go about his day. So it helps with all of that.
It was always tough, especially when I first started. And nobody knew what hypochlorous acid was 10 years ago. And it was tough not to almost sound like you're selling snake oil. It's like, I know we'd always say it's the WD-40 of skin repair, or the like big fat, the Windex from My Big Fat Greek Wedding, because it just works on so many different things. But so many things are bacterial or inflammation related with skin, right? And so as a kind of very safe, non-toxic solution, it's a great first line kind of therapy. I always say, especially fungal issues can be tricky, and it might not always work, but it can't hurt. So it's a great, especially when we do a lot in the pediatric community now as well. And with babies, just have a host of skin problems, right?
Yeah.
From baby, and diaper rash, number one, right? But this can help both prevent and actually help, treat the diaper rash. But then things like, baby acne, hand, foot, and mouth, all those are just bacterial, viral issues. So before you have to jump to something that's going to be a harsher chemical or a steroidal treatment, this is a great kind of first line option to see if it works.
And the thing with skin, I did a whole podcast about it. The thing with skin that I always tell patients is first assume that it is, I'll back up. Somebody goes into a dermatologist, and this is no shade on my dermatology friends, but this is consistent. My daughter literally just went to the dermatologist, and this is what happened because I told her this is what would happen, and this is what happens. They tell you it's eczema, and then they give you a topical steroid. And if you give somebody a topical steroid and it's actually fungal or bacterial, and it's usually some version of both with a biofilm, then the steroid is going to inhibit your immune system, and that infection is going to explode because you just shut down the immune system, right? So that is a terrible idea. I'd never start with a topical steroid. I always start with an antifungal. I assume fungal before anything else when it comes to skin, especially if it's in the folds. Like, it's fungal until proven otherwise, without taking a biopsy or a scraping. And this covers, like, I don't have to guess which antifungal. This will cover the whole kit and caboodle. And then if that doesn't work, I will consider an antimicrobial, an antibacterial. But the problem with antibacterials is, like, when you're using a polysporin, like neomycin, or what is it? Neosporin, that polysporin, people can have an allergic reaction to that. And so that's
like 20% of people have an allergic reaction.
Super common. So now it blows up. And when it blows up, whatever fungal or bacteria was there, like this tattoo I had done, that's exactly what happened. I used polysporin on it and had an allergic reaction. It swelled up, and then it got such a severe infection that I had to go on antibiotics, like oral antibiotics, to get it to clear. And then it shoved all the ink out, and I had to have it redone. It was a nightmare. So the bottom line is, you can guess with all these different antifungals, or antibacterials, maybe you're going to have allergic reaction. Some of them are not that great to put on skin. Talk about how bad putting hydrogen peroxide is on the skin.
Yeah, I mean, hydrogen peroxide, it's going to kill bacteria, but the other problem is it's going to kill all those healthy growth factors that your body's producing that's trying to help heal itself.
Yep.
Where hypochlorous is actually 100 times more powerful than bleach. So you're getting that really powerful antibacterial, but you're not killing any of those healthy growth factors. So it's actually going to help support that natural healing process. So by just dousing with hydrogen peroxide, yes, you're going to help reduce the risk of infection, but you're not helping your body heal itself.
No, and it basically turns your skin to soap.
Yeah.
So you are destroying the skin layer that was trying to epithelialize. Like it's trying to heal, and then it's bad. I've learned I used to teach dermatology at the chiropractic college. So I've learned all these things by default. And so anyway, hypochlorous acid's like, I've even seen people nebulize it into the air. I've seen people nebulize. I'm not suggesting they do it with this product, but I have seen people nebulize hypochlorous acid themselves or just disperse it into the air just to kind of clear. I've seen it at different medical conferences, like A4M. There was a guy at A4M who had a bunch of machines going, and the whole venue or the whole vendor hall was like getting doused with it because it was in the middle of COVID. And he was like, I don't want to get COVID. So they had it dispensing through the air, and like, it's that safe.
Yep, it caught on, and the EPA approved it for killing the COVID virus.
Really?
And you were talking about
talk about it.
We are not. We are a medical product used for human use, but there are a lot of hypochlorous now coming out for hard surface, and it is a really cool non-toxic cleaner as well.
Yeah.
You'll actually see hospitals use fogging machines, so they'll come in and they'll fog the hospital room after a patient's there, and so there's just so much versatility to it. Now the difference is, and you can even get an at-home generator to make it for hard surface, but you would never want to use that on your skin because when you're using it as hard surface and you're doing like an at-home generator, you don't know what that parts per million is probably way too high. And the pH range, again, there could be some skin irritation, and you just wouldn't trust it to be used on skin, but for a countertop, it works fantastic.
Yeah, except my husband wants it to smell. He's just convinced that it's not. He's like, why are you spraying water on the counter? I was like, because it works. Just trust the process. It doesn't smell like anything.
Yeah.
So he wants it. Well, it has, when you nebulize it or when you disperse it in the air, there's like a vague chlorine.
You do.
Scent.
I mean, it's in the chlorine family, so we get that. It kind of smells like pool water a little bit sometimes. So you get a slight little scent to it. The one we get a lot too is, we grew up with peroxide and all these things that sting so bad when you put them on an open cut. And people think because it doesn't sting, it's not working. And you're like, no, it doesn't have to sting. It's killing all the bacteria.
Well, the stinging is disrupting the tissues.
Yes.
And the hydrogen peroxide is turning it to soap. We all did that, right? Like any wound was like, the more it bubbled, the better, supposedly. And that's not good, guys. Just for everyone listening. No more hydrogen peroxide on wounds.
And I think that's why we caught on so much with moms, is because you can have this product that's not, your kids aren't running, from it because it stings. And also, I think, Neosporin was invented 70 years ago. It's synthetic antibiotics. It's a petroleum base. It's really not even that great of an antimicrobial. So there's just way, way better products out there. I love hypochlorous acid because of the multifunctionality. You can spray it around your eyes, ears, mouth, all these different things. But colloidal silvers, Manuka honeys, they're all good antimicrobials too.
Oh yeah, Manuka honey. I love Manuka honey for topical. I had a patient, actually we used hypochlorous acid. We used this product too. She was an 80-some-year-old woman. She came to me with chronically cold hands and feet. No one had ever tested her thyroid before. And she was presenting with basically Raynaud's. Whenever she would get cold, she'd get super cold. She was very thin, and he would have to put her in the shower and warm her back up. And then her, with Raynaud's, your hands just go white. You probably know this, like surfers probably get it all the time. That is a autoimmune process that people don't realize. It's kind of like the harbinger of what could be coming. And so she had a foot ulceration that was so bad. And because she wasn't getting good perfusion in her distal extremities, I basically worked the Manuka honey in. I got her on a bunch of thyroid hormone because she desperately needed some thyroid hormone, and it totally cleared. But to maintain it, I recommended this. So this was a good secondary backup. I've used it for sunburn. Like I said, I've used it extensively on my dogs. I put it in my dog's ears. I don't know how much they liked that, but sometimes dogs will I'm not allowed to treat dogs, so I'm just talking about my own dogs here, but sometimes dogs will get like a fungally kind of biofilmy black. It looks black. It doesn't smell good, especially the floppy-eared dogs. And so the gel in particular, I can get in there and start to break some of that up because I didn't realize it was a biofilm destroyer. I thought I was because I was rubbing it, but that makes sense because sometimes it takes a minute to get that out of there.
Yep. Yeah, it gets used in animal health all the time. It gets used in the equine space too quite a bit. If you can imagine race horses and all the skin issues that you get with horses as well. So you get a lot of use there.
That's the big bottles I would buy from the farm store.
Yeah.
I was like, come here, husband. I'm going to spray you down. But that was definitely to douse your cows or your horses, which is awesome. So you have a sunscreen. I want to talk about it really quick. It's behind you.
Yep.
I did an episode recently, and I do not have a study to back this number up because a lot of people have asked, but I did a deep dive into mineral sunscreens. And I figured out, based on the way that the timing and the percentage of zinc, you needed to be around 18% zinc minimum to block out the UVA rays. So you could block out the UVB rays with a lower percentage of zinc. And they'll often put titanium dioxide in there to sort of boost up the SPF and to make it more of a broad spectrum. But to really get UVA protection, there are no chemical sunscreens that do the job very well. Avobenzone is cleared for UVA and broad spectrum, but it basically deteriorates in the sun very quickly. So the only way to get adequate UVA protection, which is the one that, ages the crap out of our skin, is to have a zinc at a high enough concentration. We don't know exactly what that is, but based on the math I did, it came out to be around 18 to 20%, and yours is at 19. So I was so excited to see that because I was like, I can actually use this, because I literally went into my cupboard and threw away all of my sunscreens because they were like zinc 7%, zinc 8%, but they'd use that titanium dioxide to get that SPF, clearance, I guess. So you tell me about this because you probably know more.
Yeah, it's been an interesting, again, because I came from more the hospital-based side of things, and that's how I got introduced to hypochlorous acid. And we just watched over the last 10 years build such an amazing fan base of active skin repair as a hypochlorous product. But by doing that, and I think we have now over 1 million customers, right? And so we've built a really good base of customers that, I think trust us and trust our brand. And by doing that, I started to learn a lot about that kind of non-toxic skin world. And you realize how many bad products are out there. Scammy, a lot of greenwashing. And so we said, you know what? Let's identify some areas that we think, would be beneficial to a hypochlorous acid. That's our core to our product. But, we don't want you to get sunburn. It works on sunburn, but we'd like to help you prevent getting sunburn. So sun care was obviously a natural one. We also came out with a hydrating serum, which uses a hyaluronic acid. We imported Italian hyaluronic acid that we get a lot. Hypochlorous can be drying, and so a lot of our customers use it for things like eczema and any atopic dermatitis, psoriasis, and they wanted something to be able to help with the hydration as well, and so we came out with a hydrating serum.
How do you layer that with the hypochlorous? Do you do that first and then the serum?
Always first. So hypochlorous acid and the molecule take about 15 seconds, all the data tells us. And so you want to wait for about 15 seconds, and you can just pat it dry and then apply the serum after that.
Okay.
Same thing with a sunscreen if you're using it. If you hand me the bottle of the spray.
You don't have to let this dry down?
Do you need to let it dry down? You needed to let it sit for 15 seconds.
So just 15 and then you can dab it off. Okay, I didn't know that. I always just let it dry, which can take, depending on how much I drench it.
So a lot of people are using it as a daily facial routine, as a cleanser, and then you can apply, dab it down, wait 15 seconds, and then you'd be able to apply a serum, sunscreen, or anything like that after. The thing about going into sunscreens too is we also realized we have a great research and development team, and we started to look at a lot of the really good natural ones. They were really pasty. It was tough to wear. So we really wanted to formulate something that was wearable without having that kind of white cast to it.
We call it the corpse bride look.
Yes. Yeah. As a surfer, it drives me crazy. I mean, you're like scrubbing your face after you get out of the water to not look, like you have a Casper look to you. But and then on top of that, we wanted to go another level and go through the whole EWG verified process. And I'm not sure if you're aware of what EWG
Yes.
is, but
Environmental Working Group.
yep.
They rate everything.
They rate everything, and then they've created a new verification program, which is their highest level. So if you go through, their scientists dissect everything. And I mean, you can't just put an ingredient in there. They want to see lab reports on it. So it's really in depth. And then if it passes everything, you've got the EWG verification. So we are doing that for all of our products that fall into the cosmetic range.
Nice.
So our hydrating serums, EWG verified, our sunscreens, EWG verified as well. So you know that the product's going to work, but it's also very clean ingredients.
The sunscreen process, I hear, is a real hurdle.
It's taken a
I
little
heard,
while.
I heard it's a whole, like all the folks I follow that have their own skincare lines, every time they start getting into sunscreens, it's like a whole thing. So.
It is a whole thing. And again, we actually have 2 more coming out the one we have right now is a daily hydrating sunscreen. But we have 2 more coming out that will be waterproof.
Nice.
So much more for kind of at the beach days. We're going to come out with a stick too. So easy to use on kids as well.
Yeah, that's awesome. Oh God, I was walking through the parking lot yesterday. We were going for a hike and there was a mom just spraying her kids down with sunscreen. And I was like, stop, because the chemical sunscreens are like the data's pretty clear. Like the hormonal disruption part is not my favorite. So seeing 2 young boys getting doused, I just wanted to pull out my my mineral sunscreen and be like, here.
I know I have a 4-year-old daughter too. And it's like, what I think about when I go back and like just the food we eat, right? But like also all the toxic chemicals that your parents were slathering on me when I was a little kid, and, followed by Fruit Loops and all those things. And yeah, we know a lot more now. So it's crazy.
I was going to mention too, when we were talking about skin, so occlusives, there's in the skincare girly world, they like to put the balms on the face and they glaze donut their face at night with some kind of occlusive, and they might even use petroleum or petrolatum in some of these products. And I really love the idea when it makes me think of wounds, and in wound care, when there's wet healing and there's dry healing. Just for the audience, a dry healing would be like how we've always done it, where you just kind of put something on that's antimicrobial and then you let it dry out and you let the skin granulate out. But that can lead to a lot of scarring. And so in some cases, like on the face, after I've had unfortunately, a couple basal cell carcinomas removed, and you want to keep them wet with some kind of hydrocolloid patch or some kind of petroleum or petrolatum cover occlusion. And the problem with that is if you lock in bacteria, it is a real pain in the butt and you create a lot of problems. If you put a hydrocolloid patch over an open ulcerated wound and there's bacteria growing in there, and I've done this to myself and it's awful. And I know we touched on this earlier, but I just wanted to double down because I have been spraying those wounds down with that first. I was letting it dry though. I didn't realize you only needed 15 seconds. So that just changed everything. And then I would put the occlusive, which I've had no problems, but like that's been a total game changer on that. Because if you want wet healing, you're going to get a better result with your cosmetic surgeries or any kind of wound, but with leaving less of a scar, but you really run the risk of locking in the bad guys. So
yeah, and I mean the last thing you want is a staph infection, right?
Yeah.
So
festering.
Festering. So yeah, this works great. And all of our clinical data shows. And the great thing about hypochlorous acid, I think one of the things that really drew it to me as well is I really like when there's clinical evidence around it. And so everything I'm saying, if you go to PubMed and you Google, or search hypochlorous acid, there's well over 100 peer-reviewed journal articles. The Cleveland Clinic did a great article on hypochlorous acid. So again, it's kind of all backed by data. And when formulated properly and you have all the things that you need, it can kill really complex bacteria like staph and MRSA within 15 seconds.
Yeah.
So again, if that's just topically, so you're just killing that bacteria strain, but it works great as kind of that preventative measure.
Yeah, I love it. And then your hydrating serum, I actually just started using because you were kind enough to send me some. And since I've been here just a few months, man, I dry out in the desert. I had no idea, but like I get out of the shower and I've got shower filters on and everything, but I dry out so badly. And so I've been actually using that on my entire body. And use it before I put on like a really heavy duty cream at night. So it's been great. Like my shins, normally I get really, really dry shin. It's not great. And I was trying to put on a dress the other day and I was like, well, God, my shins look like scales. I look like fish skin. So I've been using that underneath and it's made a huge difference. Just locking in that moisture layer before I put something occlusive on.
We probably should have done it in a little 2-ounce bottle and charged $200 for it. But the idea was to create a really high quality hyaluronic acid, because it is such a great molecule as well, especially for hydration. But we wanted to be able to help people that were dealing with more chronic skin issues all over the body. And I'm glad to hear you say that.
Yeah.
Sorry, my wife and I, we use it every day. You get out of the shower, you put it on your whole body, and it's at a price point where you don't have, you're not putting a $200 little cream on your arms. You feel okay doing it. So yeah, I use it the same way.
A lot of the hyaluronic acid serums are, like you said, they're small bottles, they're expensive, and they're watery.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. The feel, like texture and feel matter to me.
Yep.
And that feels like your gel, your active skin repair gel that you have with the hypochlorous acid. So yeah, I was just like, I don't know where I'm supposed to use, and it's not real clear on the bottle what you're supposed to use it for. And I figured, I didn't know you were a surfer, but I was like, well, I bought the other stuff in a surf shop, so I'm just going to assume it's for the body. So my husband's like, what are you doing? I'm like, I'm double layering. I was glazing my body.
It is meant for the whole body. I mean, if you just want to use it on the face, it's fine. But we did kind of go at it with that idea that it's going to work for the whole entire body. And your husband might not like this, but I like that it doesn't have a scent too. So it's not like there's no fragrance to it. It goes on light. It doesn't feel slimy.
He doesn't like body fragrance. He just wants his countertop cleansers.
I hear him.
To smell like something. I don't know. I think Pine Sol, or I don't know what he uses. He uses shit that is toxic, and then I yell at him, and then I try to give him my clean stuff, and then we have a to-do, because it doesn't satisfy whatever that itch is that he needs to scratch to think he's cleaning his countertop. So I don't know. It's silly. No, I just love it. I'm excited to try the sunscreen, and I think it's a great product, and I have been a big fan. And like I said, this goes back to like the regenerative medicine world where it was hospital-based, and hypochlorous acid outperformed all of the other topicals that we were using to prep the joint. So, and like I said, very high risk. I mean, we were out in the Yucatan Peninsula. We were in the jungle in a hospital where the people were Mayan, and we had to have translators come in to translate Mayan to Spanish, to Mexican Spanish, and then translate it to English. I mean, that's how, and interestingly, like they were built, because we weren't doing ultrasound guided injections. And I know my anatomy really well. And these folks were like, different ethnicities have different musculoskeletal, systems. And so they were built different, like getting into their joint space was different. So sometimes you kind of had to play around a little bit. And I was like, please God, don't let us give them an infection. And we just kept, every single time I'd be like, somebody spray. So somebody was standing there just spraying the joint down, and that was it. That's true. They made us wait like 15, 20 seconds, and it didn't even have to dry down completely. We could go through the joint at that point, or go through the skin, and like very impressive. So.
Yep. Yeah, it gets used all the time in orthopedic surgery, and our hospital business still donates a bunch of product to all over the world for those exact kind of reasons. Infectious disease doctors love when they're going over and doing that philanthropic work to have a product like this.
Yeah, it's fast. It's easy. Okay, great. Well, where can everybody find you and find out all the information and get a hold of this product?
So our website, activeskinrepair.com, and we also have a code, Dr. Tina, for 25% off. So go to our website. You can find us on Instagram at Active Skin Repair. And then I always tell people go to Amazon as well, and use the coupon code that I just gave you for our website, but you can read all of the reviews. We have thousands and thousands of 5-star reviews, but it also will tell you all the different ways that people are using it and seeing success. So it's a great way if you kind of want to hear how other people are using it and the success that they've had. That's a great place as well. And we'll be in CVS, all nationwide CVS starting in March too.
Awesome. So people can just grab it over the counter then. Okay. So if they want to use the coupon code, the website, say it again.
ActiveSkinRepair.com.
Okay. So the full thing.com. We'll make sure it's in the show notes. And then Dr. Tina will give them the discount on the website.
Yep.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show today. There are people who don't tolerate standard dosing of hormones. That doesn't mean it's not for you. And it doesn't mean that you can't handle estrogen or that you don't need estrogen. It's starting to lead to depression. That is estrogen leaving the building. And I highly encourage you to seek out help from somebody who knows what they're doing. I will tell you that estrogen leaving the body causes the hair shaft itself to become thinner. So the diameter shrinks.